Dear friends, today we're going to look at the fifth commandment, thou shalt not kill. Like the other commandments, it of course requires some clarification. What is specifically meant by thou shalt not kill is not that all killing is forbidden, but that we are not to take the life of the innocent on our own authority. In actual fact, if we pause and reflect, this commandment is not so much about death as it is about life, because what God is saying is that He is the master of life and death, and that we are not free to terminate life, not even our own, for He wills that we should live. I came, our Lord says, that they may have life and have it more abundantly. Bishop Fulton Sheen in this aspect points out that every heart and mind in creation desires fundamentally three realities: life, truth, and love. The first deep-seated yearning in the human heart is that of life. Of all treasures, it is that which we surrender last, and with the greatest reluctance. Titles, joys, and wealth, and power, and ambition, honor, all these we will let go, provided we can hold on to that precious, palpitating, vibrating thing called life. The very instinct which impels a man to put out his hand when he walks in the dark proves to that he is willing to sacrifice a part of his body rather than to endanger that which he holds most precious, namely his life. God then is clearly the master and the source of all life. He is, we say, the Lord, the giver of life. And so this means that God alone has absolute right over all of creation. God alone has perfect and complete dominion over all of human life, for He is the author of life and death. And so every man has only indirect power or dominion over his life. I'm not given complete power over my own life, and so I have a duty to preserve it. I cannot say I can do whatever I want with my life. No, I am not totally in charge. There is a higher authority that I must answer to for my life. Hence, the taking of my own life or the life of another on my own authority is never permitted. And so both suicide and murder are a grave violation of God's law. For this reason, the Church in the past often refused the public mass and the burial of those who would commit suicide. But we can look at what this commandment does forbid for us. It forbids, firstly, what we call willful murder, that is the direct killing of an individual. But this also includes assisted suicide, euthanasia, or abortion. It also forbids the exposing of one's life or health to unnecessary danger without sufficiently grave reason. It forbids fighting, quarreling, injurious words that lead to quarrels, as our Lord says, and whosoever shall say thou fool shall be in danger of the hellfire. It also forbids scandal, because scandal kills the soul, so to speak, of our neighbor, and it forbids hatred, that is enmity, which is directly opposed to the love of God and our neighbor. If any man, says St. John, says he loves God and hates his brother, he is a liar. In fact, the same disciple St. John says, whosoever hates his brother is a murderer. And so also this commandment likewise forbids then this vice of revenge, returning evil for evil. But what about the case of self-defense? Yes, the Church says that a man has a right to preserve his life, and so he has a right likewise to use the necessary means to preserve that life. On the other hand, a man has no right over another's life and may not kill him as a means to an end, because you don't like the person or whatever. But to have a blameless self-defense, we might say, there are four conditions that are necessary. Firstly, the motive in killing the person must be primarily self-defense. Secondly, the force used may only be used at the time of the attack, not before or after. And thirdly, the force may be used when there is no other way of repelling the attack. For example, if you can have recourse to someone else, the public authorities, then you're bound to. And fourthly, that no more injury may be inflicted upon the other person than is necessary to avert the actual danger. What about this question of capital punishment? Well, in the mind of the Church, public authorities possess the power of the sword, if you want, over serious criminals. God, we say, communicates, in this case, his own dominion over life to the public authority for the preservation of the common good. Hence, the death penalty is permitted by God by the due public authority. The public authority is permitted to use the death penalty, but it's not obliged to do so. It comes down to the prudential judgment of the ones in authority. And so, according to the constant teaching of the Church, it is licit for the public authority to kill evildoers directly because of a proportionately grave crime which has been duly proven. The duty to look after our life and our health we have as an obligation, and so in this regard the Church has always taught that we have to make use of what we call the natural means at our disposal, the common means to look after our health. In this regard, according to the principles of self-preservation, we must keep in mind, however, that the change or the mutilation of ourselves without sufficiently proportionate reasons has to be taken into consideration. So, for example, in the mind of the church, tattoos are not permitted to us without a sufficiently grave reason. Transgender operations are never permitted to us for any reason. Plastic surgery is only permitted for a grave reason and not so we can merely make ourselves look better. It can be used to assist in nature, but not without a proportionately serious reasons. Ear piercings and makeup are permitted in moderation in the mind of the Church for the sober adorning of women, to assist them as a complement to their appearance for the betterment of society, inasmuch as we are social beings. As regards the duty of care, and this is very important for us, not only regard ourselves, but those who we have a duty to look after. In the mind of the Church, there is a duty of preservation of our life, and this, therefore, we must make use of the ordinary means. And by the ordinary means, we're referring to those things which are commonly used by men to preserve their own life, and which are easily available to the vast majority of people, like medicine, a doctor, food and water, and so on. The extraordinary means, which in consequence are those which are not common or difficult or burdensome, we are not obliged to make use of those things to preserve our life or our health. What about organ donations? Well, as regards organ donations, the Church has always made a distinction in regards to our organs. There are things which we can say are not essential in as much as there are those organs which can either be divided or we can give away one, such like our kidney, and still live, or our liver, which can be split or divided and we can still live. Those organs could certainly be donated, but the organs which are essential for life and which cannot be given away, or if you want split in two, like the brain or the heart, without us dying, those we are not permitted to donate, because they essentially have to kill you in order to take the organ. And so the Church, being aware of this reality, the Church does not per se recognize the legal fiction we call today brain death. The motive today, we know that in the mind of many medical doctors, is the harvesting of the organs for some sort of gain. But even whether it's a question of financial gain or not, the point is they've created a legal fiction which is used to kill the individual in order to harvest the organ. And as Pope Pius XII clearly pointed out, that the death of a single organ does not constitute the death of an individual. And so long as there is a single activity of the soul in the body is alive. If your heart, for example, is pumping and you're breathing, then you're not dead. The Church is very clear on that. The Church has always defined death as the separation of the soul from the body. And so simply to conclude this commandment with the words of that same bishop we started with, if a human heart can increase the joy of living, then what must be the great heart of God? If the spark is so bright, oh, what must be the flame? God bless.